Marlon was already exhausted by his son Henry's whims, a spoiled and irresponsible young man. Determined to teach him a lesson, Marlon made a drastic decision. That was when the humble farmer Charlotte came into the picture. As a form of punishment, he would send Henry to her farm. However, the consequences of this wager would be surprising. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. Henry was the only son of Marlon, a millionaire businessman. At 25 years old, Henry led a carefree life, never having needed to work. His days were filled with rides in his extravagant truck, endless parties and excessive spending. Marlon watched his son's behavior with growing concern, frequently discussing the matter with his wife. "Dear, at his age, I had already been working for a long time. It's very easy to enjoy life with my money, isn't it?" Marlon said, frustrated with his wife's constant defense of their son. The situation reached its peak one night when Marlon was awakened by a call from Henry. The young man had been involved in a car accident while participating in an illegal race with his truck. Although no one was injured, Henry was detained and needed his father's help to be released. Marlon drove to the police station, his face tense and his eyes filled with disappointment. Upon arriving, he found Henry sitting in a cell with wrinkled clothes and a pleading look. "Father, I'm so glad you came. I need you to pay the bail so I can get out of here," said Henry, his voice trembling slightly. Marlon stared at him for a few moments, the silence weighing between them. Finally, he spoke, his voice firm and controlled. "No, Henry. This time you will face the consequences of your actions. Stay here and reflect on what you did." Henry was speechless, unable to believe what he was hearing. "But father, you can't leave me here." "I can and I will. It's time for you to grow up and take on responsibilities," Marlon replied, turning to leave. The next day, while at his company, Marlon had an unexpected meeting. Charlotte, a young local farmer, came to negotiate the debt left by her late father. The family farm had been used as collateral for purchasing supplies from Marlon's company, and now Charlotte was struggling not to lose everything. Seeing the determination in the young woman's eyes, Marlon had an idea. "Charlotte, I have a proposal for you. I will forgive your father's debt if you agree to let my son Henry live with you on your farm for a year." Charlotte was bewildered by the unusual offer. "Live with your son for a year? I don't understand. What if I don't accept?" "Well, in this case I will have to enforce the debt and you will end up losing your farm," Marlon replied, his voice calm but firm. Knowing Henry's reputation and with no alternatives, Charlotte accepted the proposal, still uncertain about what awaited her. When Henry was released, he immediately went to his parents' mansion, hoping to find understanding and perhaps a new car to replace the one that had been destroyed in the accident. To his surprise, Marlon greeted him with shocking news. "Henry, from today on, you no longer live here. Your credit card has been blocked and there will be no new car," Marlon announced, his voice firm and resolute. "Father, what do you mean? How am I going to live?" asked Henry, incredulous. "Don't worry, I've already arranged a place for you to live for the next year," replied Marlon, a small smile appearing on his lips. Hours later, Henry found himself stepping out of a taxi in front of a rustic farm. His designer clothes seemed completely out of place in the rural setting. As he took the first step, his white shoes sank into a mud puddle, eliciting an expression of disgust from him. At the top of the stairs leading to the house entrance, Charlotte awaited him with a welcoming smile. "Welcome, Henry. It seems we'll be housemates for the next few months." The house was simple but cosy. Rustic wooden furniture decorated the rooms, and old photos on the walls told the story of Charlotte's family. Henry, accustomed to luxury, looked around with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. When Charlotte took him to see his room, Henry was shocked. He had imagined he would stay in the comfortable master bedroom, but Charlotte led him to a small room with just a mattress on the floor and a modest wardrobe. "I think you better change clothes," said Charlotte, already hurrying. "I have a pair of boots in the kitchen cupboard that belonged to my father. It's getting dark, and we need to gather the cows and pigs in the corral and the chickens in the coop." Henry, confused and out of place, followed Charlotte. The following hours were the most challenging of his life. He ran after a runaway cow, fell in the mud trying to catch a piglet, and was pecked by an angry chicken. By the end of the day, he was exhausted and dirty, while Charlotte seemed not to have even broken a sweat. Upon arriving home, Henry threw himself onto the living room floor, completely exhausted. Charlotte, however, gave him no respite. "Come on, get up and wash your hands. We have to cook dinner. I'm not your personal cook," she said, already stirring the pots. Dinner was a chicken stew with homemade bread that Charlotte had baked that morning. Henry devoured the meal, surprised by the delicious taste of the simple dish. The next morning, the sun hadn't even risen when Charlotte woke Henry. "Wake up, Henry. We have to feed the animals, milk the cows, gather the eggs, and pick the vegetables to sell at the market. Let's go." All of Henry's muscles ached, but he got up, dressed quickly, and followed Charlotte. "What about breakfast?" he asked, hopeful. "Grab a slice of bread. We don't have time to waste," Charlotte replied, already on her way to the barn. The workday started early. Even before sunrise, Charlotte's old truck was already loaded with vegetables, fruits, milk cans, and a few chickens. When they arrived at the town's central square, Henry felt embarrassed by the old, noisy vehicle, but Charlotte didn't give him time to complain. "The truck won't unload itself," she said, pulling him into action. Gradually, Henry started feeling more at ease. It was gratifying to see the fruit of his labour. Charlotte's little stall was busy, and customers always greeted her with a smile. Henry began to notice how attentive Charlotte was with each customer, remembering their preferences and always having a kind word. As the weeks went by, Henry's body adapted to the new routine. He no longer felt pain upon waking up, and often was already up performing his tasks even before Charlotte called him. Henry began to admire that hard-working and honest young woman more and more. He learned to value the effort required to earn a daily living and started finding satisfaction in simple things he would never have noticed before. Dinners became his favourite time of the day. He and Charlotte cooked together and then sat at the table to talk. It was during one of these dinners that Charlotte shared her dream. "You know, Henry, I've always wanted to produce my own cheeses here on the farm instead of delivering the milk to the factory. But I never had enough money to build a proper barn and buy the necessary equipment," she said, her eyes gleaming as she spoke of her dream. Henry reflected on how he had always been able to buy whatever he wanted, and an idea came to his mind. "Charlotte, what if, in addition to the fruits and vegetables we sell at the market, we started making some homemade jams and maybe some of your delicious bread? We could set aside this extra money for building the barn." Charlotte loved the idea, and every night they began to prepare jams and bread together. Henry had never felt part of a project before, and it was rewarding to see the fruit of their joint effort. Throughout that year, little by little, they managed to save for the construction of the barn and the purchase of the equipment. As the days went by, Henry and Charlotte grew closer and closer. They exchanged knowing glances during work and discreet smiles during meals. The friendship between them was transforming into something deeper, although neither of them dared to admit it. There was only 1 week left for the agreed year to end, and they were very close to reaching the financial goal for the cheese warehouse project. On a cold, rainy night with a strong wind howling outside, a deafening noise startled them. A large tree had fallen on Charlotte's old pickup truck, completely destroying it. Charlotte, upon seeing the scene, began to cry inconsolably. All the saved money would have to be used to buy a new vehicle, essential for the farm's operation. Henry comforted her, gently holding her. In that moment of vulnerability, their eyes met and without thinking, they shared a tender and hesitant kiss. Shortly after, feeling awkward, they pulled away, with Henry apologising and Charlotte trying to hide the blush on her cheeks. The next morning when Charlotte woke up, Henry was nowhere to be found. She felt a pang of disappointment, thinking that perhaps he had decided to leave before the end of the agreement, especially after what happened the night before. What Charlotte didn't know was that Henry had left early for his parents' mansion. Marlon was surprised to find his son in the living room so early. "Henry, what are you doing here at this hour?" Marlon asked, intrigued. "Money, Dad. I need your money," replied Henry, with a determination Marlon had never seen before in his son. Henry explained to his father how the past year had transformed his life. He talked about the project he had been working on with Charlotte, about how the rain from the previous night had ruined almost an entire year's work. He spoke about Charlotte, describing her as an honourable and hard-working young woman, and explained that he needed the money not for personal luxuries, as before, but to help build the barn on the farm. Marlon listened in silence, fascinated by the evident change in his son. Henry had grown and matured in a way he could hardly believe. Without hesitation, Marlon agreed to help. On that same day, Henry returned to the farm, accompanied by trucks loaded with construction materials and workers. Charlotte, upon seeing the commotion, was left speechless. Henry approached her, a shy smile on his lips. "Charlotte, this past year has been the best of my life. I wanted to know if you'll have me for a few more years. Or maybe forever." Charlotte, emotional, couldn't hold back the tears of happiness. She hugged Henry tightly, whispering a yes in his ear. In the years that followed, Henry and Charlotte worked side by side, transforming the small farm into a prosperous artisanal cheese business. The love that had blossomed between them during that year of forced cohabitation flourished into a solid and lasting relationship. Marlon, watching from afar the transformation of his son and the success of the young couple, felt proud. His risky decision a year ago had not only taught Henry responsibility, but had also provided him with a happiness that money could never buy. The story of Henry and Charlotte became an example in the region of how love, hard work, and perseverance can transform lives and achieve dreams. And so, on the small farm that was once the scene of a life lesson, a new story of love and success continued to be written day after day, year after year. If you enjoyed, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with a number from 1 to 5 to let us know how much you liked the story. Also, watch the video that is currently on your screen. See you soon.